we have done for all the organelles. Let us look at the other cellular components. One of it is plasma membrane. Say one of them, plasma membrane. So plasma membranes is a biological membrane. It's highlights their biological membrane that separate the interior of all cells from outer outside environment. So generally, plasma membranes serve a very important, a barrier between the external environments and also the cytoplasm. And all plasma membrane composed of double layer of phospholipids. So we term this as the phospholipid bilayer. Are you clear? Okay, phospholipid bilayer, either spell it this way or you can, phospholipid bilayer. Okay, can I see that? So this phospholipid bilayer, what's so special about this phospholipid bilayer? If you draw this phospholipid bilayer, this phospholipid consists of one glycerol molecule, two fatty acids, and they will link it with a phosphate, at the heads there. So if you look at the structure, it will be something like this. Glycerol, the structure of glycerol, normally I will represent it this way. Okay, glycerol. So glycerol attached to two fatty acid tail. Another one will be the phosphate group. Okay, so this is a phosphate. And this is the glycerol. And we have two fatty acid tail. Okay, so in terms of structure, you can see that this part is called as a head of the phospholipid. This one is called as a tail of the phospholipid. So how they arrange? They arrange, so normally we represent the phospholipid molecule by one circle and two tail. So this part is the head, this part is the tail. So how they arrange themselves into the phospholipid bilayer, this one layer, right? So if you draw it, they will form one layer. Can you see that? And second layer, they will be opposite. Can you see that? So we form this what we call as a phospholipid bilayer. You get it? Okay, phospholipid bilayer. So the head, what is the function of the head? So the head of the phospholipid actually facing the external aqueous. Okay, external aqueous medium, for example, tissue fluids. Okay, another one will face the interior cytoplasm. Also consists of a lot of the water, a lot of water. So they interact with the water molecule. And at the center here, we call as the hydrophobic core. Okay, hydrophobic core. So what's the function of this hydrophobic core? Hydrophobic core basically act as a barrier so that those charged particle or polar particle, they won't be able to diffuse across this phospholipid bilayer. So it means that this phospholipid bilayer, they are selectively permeable. They only allow a particular item to pass through but block some other particle. So what are the particles they can diffuse across? For example, non-polar oxygen, non-polar CO2, they can diffuse across the phospholipid bilayer. Lipid-soluble compound, for example, glycerol, fatty acid, they can diffuse across the phospholipid bilayer. But those ions, sodium ions, potassium ion, sorry, they cannot diffuse across the phospholipid bilayer. For example, glucose, they are too large to pass through the phospholipid bilayer. Protein cannot. So that's why our membrane, we term it as a selectively permeable. Are you clear? So how we arrange? Arrange in terms of hydrophilic heads of the phospholipid face the aqueous or watery surrounding and also the cytoplasm. Are you clear? Okay. And they have the non-polar hydrocarbon tail, or we call it a hydrophobic. Now, phobic means phobia, scared of water. Okay, so they face another hydrocarbon tail, so forming a hydrophobic core or hydrophobic layer. And the membrane is very, very thin. This is the value that you need to remember. It's about around 7 nanometer thick. Are you clear? 7 nanometer thick. Okay, so it's so thin that again our light microscope won't be able to help us to resolve it and let us see 2 layers of the phospholipid. But if you use the electron microscope, yes, you're going to see 2 layers. You can see that this is the hydrophobic. It's a hydrophilic head with the center core hydrophobic tail. Are you clear? Okay. Then what are the components of the phospholipids? Other components of phospholipid at this moment do not need to know what are their role. Okay, basically cholesterol. Then we have the membrane protein. Okay, what else? Membrane protein involved in the transport, involved in the recognitions, okay, cell recognitions. And sometimes this membrane protein or the lipids, they may have the carbohydrates group. Okay, for example, we do have the glycoprotein and also the glycolipids. Okay, so if I draw it now, guys. So if you look at the structure of our membranes, so the most major component is the phospholipid molecule. Okay, phospholipid molecule. So this phospholipid molecule, in between of this or among this phosphomolecule, you may see the protein. Okay, can you see that? Then you may have the phospholipid molecule. Continue. You see that? Okay, sometimes some protein actually located only embedded partially, something like this. Okay, doesn't matter as long as they are protein. Okay, so those protein are known as the membrane protein. Okay, now sometimes the protein may actually located at the surface only. Okay, the blue color, all of them are membrane proteins. Okay, now we may have some protein. Okay, some proteins with the short fragments of the carbohydrate. Can you see that? Okay, sometimes you may have attached to the lipids, short fragments of the sugar attached to the phospholipids or lipids. Okay, and then we may have some molecule of cholesterol in between of them. So this make our membrane protein. As a membrane protein, the structure of the membranes. Can you see that? Okay, so let us label them. So you can see that first of all, these are the phospholipid bilayer. What happened to me? My spelling. Phospholipid bilayer. Okay, then we have the membrane protein. So this membrane protein actually located at not embedded in the protein. I mean, it's right. So this are not embedded at the membrane. So this protein is known as the peripheral protein. Okay, so term it as a membrane protein. So this is a peripheral protein. Okay, so those are the ones that, can you see that? This also membrane protein, but embedded. Okay, so we call them as integral protein. Okay, one is embedded one, another one is not. Okay, now this one also membrane protein. But what's special for this membrane protein? They are transmembrane protein and they have pore. So most of them, they act as the transport protein. For what? To transport a particular item to pass through, for example, ions, proteins, okay, amino acid, for example, okay, glucose. So those, they are transport proteins. Okay, and then you can see that those structure, this one is known as the glycoprotein. protein. And this one is known as the glycolipid. Okay, and then we do have the cholesterol. Okay, cholesterol. Are you clear? So this is the label. Okay. So what are their role? We're going to learn it in the cell membrane when we come to the cell membrane. Okay, so highlight the term here. Okay, the plasma membranes, they are selectively permeable, or in CIE or in exam, you are allowed to use a partially permeable but not semi-permeable. Are you clear? Okay, don't use the word semi. Semi half. Okay, semi means half. Okay, so in this case, we don't use the word semi, but we use the word selectively permeable. Due to what? Due to the barrier. It forms the barrier between two aqueous compartments, and the interior of the phospholipid bilayer occupied by hydrophobic fatty acid chain. So this is impermeable to polar water-soluble molecule. But non-polar molecule, for example, oxygen, carbon dioxide, and lipid-soluble molecule, they are able to move across the membrane. Okay, so with this, I have done for the membrane. Okay,